Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. A final lap has it that Lagos State government has indeed recorded an all-time high rate of domestic violence in the last 1 year. And let's also tell you this, that Commissioner for Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Mrs. Bolaji Dada, revealed that a total of 662 cases were received in the last 1 year and 88 cases were referred to the Office of the Public Defenders. According to the Commissioner, the Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation received a total of 662 cases, out of which 592 were women and 70 were men. Joining us this morning to discuss this is the Executive Secretary, Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team, Titilola Vivour-Adeniyi. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, we'll say well done on the work that's been done. These numbers are alarming. I think the first question should be, is it that we are seeing an increase in the reporting of domestic violence cases, or there's an actual increase in the violence being perpetuated?
So we believe that it's a combination of the two factors. We believe that there is increase in formal reporting, and there's also increase in commission of these vicious crimes. I always say that these issues have always been there. Domestic violence, sexual violence, but it's been shrouded in secrecy. And so with the advent of technology, social media, with increased public awareness, with demonstration of political will, we are seeing these issues, taking center stage, hence the recording of increase in reporting of cases.
All right. We do understand, if you can make this clear to us, that you would be going to the press today. Do you also want to share with us what the figures are looking like? And personally, I would like to know, do you have like a mapping to which of these areas have the highest number? Is it maybe Ikorodu, VI, or Lekki or something? Just asking.
Yes. So the Ministry of Justice is delivering its scorecard to the press today, and the DSVA is under the Lagos State Ministry of Justice. At the agency, we provided services to 6,333 survivors last year, between January to December 2023. We record on average of 250 cases monthly, new cases that are recorded at the office. Based on the data, we've been able to identify the top 5 local government areas where we have high reporting. Doesn't necessarily mean that these are the only local governments where these issues are prevalent, but it's where we have increase in reporting from these local governments. And they include Ikorodu, Alimosho, Ushofe. For children, it includes Mushin, and then for adults, it's Etiosa. And this has been for the past 3-4 years. We've had this top reporting from those local government areas.
Now, looking at, the local government you've mentioned, I don't know if there's any underlying common thread we can see among these local governments. What would you say are some of the factors that are causing this? You've mentioned children, and then you've mentioned adults. Etios have been very prevalent with adults. We'll come back to that. So let's talk about what the underlying cause is for children. Would you say it's a case of poverty? What exactly are the causes that lead to this abuse for the children and then for the adults?
Of course, population is a major factor. Alimosho is the largest local government area in Nigeria. And so it's not out of place for us to have high reporting of cases in that local government. But I also think that more importantly, a lot of advocacy, community engagement, sensitization has taken place in those 5 local governments I've highlighted, particularly Alimosho. And we must commend non-governmental organizations that have spent decades, advocating in these local governments, heightening awareness. And, we've seen a direct correlation with creating awareness and increase in reporting of cases. When you create awareness, when you let people know about support services that exist, then they will take advantage of those services. So that's one of the reasons. Aside from population, there's heightened awareness in these local governments. And of course, there are different factors that contribute to the perpetration of sexual and gender-based violence. There's patriarchy, there's gender inequality, and there's stigma associated to it. Hence, sometimes you hear situations where people say the cases we're even recording is not a true reflection of what is happening. There's a saying that for every one case that is reported, 7 have gone unreported. And so, that's also a factor. Whilst we are encouraged by the increase in reporting, we know that we've not even scratched the surface, because these issues continue to remain some of the most prevalent and underreported vices, not just in Lagos, Nigeria, but globally.
So I wanted to also, just as a follow-up question to that, share with us why it is that women oftentimes are the ones who are at the receiving end. And I ask this because many times we see people say that the focus is always on women and not on men as it should be. So why would you say, or would you first of all say that women oftentimes suffer from this the most? And if yes, why?
I mean, we just have to look at the data. It's not about what I think, right? The data shows us that we have more women reporting cases. Women are at a higher risk of experiencing sexual and gender-based violence. And we have the research that corroborates this, and we also have the data. Last year, 90% of our survivors were female, whilst 10% were male. We are not saying that men do not or cannot experience sexual and gender-based violence. What we are saying is that they can be victims or survivors, but we have women that are more at the receiving end. And it's for different reasons, Gender-based violence, at the heart of it is gender inequality. It's patriarchy. The fact that one gender is seen to be superior to the other. And this influences different things, and it takes form in different ways. And so when we say gender-based violence, we're not just talking about DV, domestic violence, and we're not just talking about physical abuse. There's emotional abuse, verbal, psychological, sexual abuse, stalking, harassment, economic abuse. And we have more women, experiencing these crimes and reporting.
All right. Would you say there's still, shock that comes from these violence, especially when it's experienced by women? Do you think there's a lot that's being done to help women speak out more? I mean, well done on the work you've been doing, especially looking at the help that you've provided. But it seems like we still have more women who are quiet about these instances or these violence that they go through. And also, can you share with us what the true image is like for men who are equally sexually abused, especially in Lagos?
So there are different reasons why survivors remain in abusive relationships. There's the fear of the unknown. There's the stigma, victim blaming, victim shaming. There's also the main one, but two major ones actually. Financial dependence on the abuser or on the alleged abuser. Let's not forget that abusers are very deliberate. They try to keep their spouses in penury. They want them to be financially dependent on them so that they don't have that support system. And the moment when a survivor says, okay, I want to break the culture of silence, I want to leave, or I want to speak up, what happens? What happens to their accommodation? And if they are children, what happens to the children? How is this person able to cope and survive? So those are some of the reasons why survivors remain in silence. Not because they are enjoying the violence, but because, they're financially dependent on the abuser. Another major factor is because of the children. I'm sure you've heard it. Oh, I can't leave because of my children. I don't want my children to come from a broken home. Forgetting that when we bring up children in toxic, violent environments, violent families, we are doing more harm than good because we are exposing them to these issues and we are normalizing violence. Hence the vicious cycle of violence. This is what they saw growing up. And then if they don't access psychosocial support, I speak of the children now, there's a high tendency that they will grow up to believe that violence is normal and they will perpetrate violence, right? So children, because of the children, religious and social-cultural factors, financial dependency on the alleged abuser, what will the people say? That phrase has kept survivors in precarious situations. What will people say? People have lost their lives because of what will people say.
Right.
And so let me just use the opportunity to advocate that irrespective of the decision you take, people would say. But the most important thing is be alive so that you can even tell the story, from your own perspective.
All right. I'm still expecting the answer on the men as well. Men being
Oh, yes.
accused as well. And just to top that up, before I wrap up my questions, while you answer that of the men, I'd like you to also look at how do you handle cases of false accusations? Because we've also seen this come up where some people have been wrongly accused. How do you handle that as well?
Okay. So is concerning the men, as I said, we recorded, well, I gave you the percentage, but the number was actually 333 cases of reporting. We received 333 cases from men. Majority of our data is actually domestic violence. So we're talking about physical abuse against men, verbal, emotional abuse against men. In terms of sexual abuse, what we have is more of boys, boys that are sexually abused by men or sexually abused by a female adult, right? And I don't have the exact data, I can share that, but we do have cases reported to us of boys being sexually abused by men or being sexually abused by adult females.
Okay.
The second question, actually.
Yes. Yes, go ahead with the second question. Falsely accused. Those were falsely accused.
Yes, it's a crime. Providing false information is actually a crime. It's punishable by up to 3 years imprisonment. Yes, indeed, we've had cases where, especially for sexual violence, we've had incidents where we received a case, we investigate, and our investigation findings revealed that there was nothing like, sexual violence. So as a state, we have to be very careful. When we're talking about sexual violence, when we're talking about rape, defilement, we're looking at up to life imprisonment. So it's not enough for a person to report a case. That is where investigation comes in. We have to be able to link the alleged abuser or the alleged perpetrator to the crime. And so we are not in a rush to immediately charge a case to court. Investigation must be conducted. We must have corroborative evidence that gives credence to the assertions or the claims or the story of the survivor. And it's only when that has been done, when there's a prima facie case, there's evidence, then the case is charged to court. So in the past, we've actually had those kind of issues, and we have advised the Directorate of Public Prosecutions and the police accordingly that such persons should be made to face the full wrath of the law.
Absolutely. Now, I think it's important that we wrap up the conversation by having you talk to people who are currently in marriages or relationships where they've been domestically or sexually abused. I mean, you've given them the first advice that whatever they decide, people will still talk. And I know that there are a number of people who stay back because they're afraid of being shamed and they're afraid of being disbelieved. We saw that in the case of the international case with Didi and how many people did not believe Cassie when she first spoke up. But then the video evidence came out and then people started to believe and speak up. So what would you say to people who are currently in situations where they are being abused, but they're afraid of being doubted, they're afraid of being criticized, and they're afraid of just, taking the next move? What should be the next move for them first?
The next move is to speak up and speak out. When we're talking about domestic violence, people should realize that it doesn't necessarily have to end up in court or the suspect or the abuser or your spouse being jailed. There are different doors of accessing justice. You can take the alternative dispute resolution door, you can take the separation door, you can take the mediation door. The most important thing is, especially if you are in Lagos, there are different support services that exist for you to take advantage of. But if you do not report, if you do not speak out, you will not be able to take advantage of those services. Permit me to inform you that every domestic violence case is a potential murder case. It can be the last shot, the last kick, the last slap. Please, don't wait until it's too late. You can reach out to us on our toll-free line, which is on your screen. And we are there for you as a government. We believe you And we want you to know that you are not alone.
All right. Titilola Vivour-Adeniyi, thank you very much for joining us. And the number to call is 0800, I mean, it's on the screen there, 08000333333. If you have any issues, you can also reach out to us on News Central TV, and we can definitely redirect you to the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team. Thank you so much for your time, and well done.
Thank you so much for having me.